And since a spine is going to take a lot of time, we start with forces. So the forces are something that allow you to manipulate the shape of the spine. And now we need to clarify the meaning of a spine. The spine, if you take this as a skeleton of human, a spine is exactly the skeleton of human. And using this spine tab, you're able to manipulate the length of it, which direction you want it to be, if you want to add a little bit of noise to it. This is basically what the spine tab does in a speed tree. And there's the skin tab, and this skin tab is just like the flesh, the meat on the bone of human. So you should have that in mind. A spine is responsible for creating the actual shape, and the skin is manipulating the geometry that is spinning around that. So you should have that in mind. And if I select the trunks and set the type to a spine only, let me set the type to spine only. You see, this is the spine. This is what the spine tab is going to manipulate. It's only the direction, but the skin tab is going to provide the geometry around that. Also, the spine tab also is going to manipulate some geometry, but the heavy lifting for the geometry is for the skin. And you should have that relationship in mind. The spine is actually the bones, and the skin is going to be the flesh and meat around that bone. So now let's go for forces. And these forces allow you to manipulate the spines. And we have various settings in here which we are going to explain. And to add a force, you're going to here in this scene tab, you hit force, add force, and these are the forces that you might add. So let's go for direction and have that in mind. The default of the force is being disabled on all of the generators. For example, if I deselect everything and apply a force, this force is not affecting anything in the scene. If you want the force to affect something, you either have to, let me delete this force that we have, you either have to select the geometry, the generator, and add a force. You see direction, and now if I select the trunk, in the force tab you see the direction is in here. You can enable it, disable it, and make the strength higher or lower. And let me delete this again and bring a force in. This time let's go for magnet. And now this magnet is by default affecting nothing. You see, if I bring it close to this one, it's not affecting anything. And if you want any of these nodes to be affected by this magnet, you select them. For example, now this trunk, and now in the force tab, there's this magnet. First check it on, and then you can enable the strength to make it weaker or stronger. So let's take this and see the various settings that this has to offer. So when you add a force into your scene, the first option is enable. Of course, this is the properties of the force itself. And there's the property which belongs to the generators in here, which we are going to explain just in a minute. So let's go to the actual force itself and start with the direction. So let me delete this one, go for direction. And if you want to change the force to something else, instead of going here and add a force and delete this one, you can hit type and choose from here. For example, this is the magnet, direction, and all of the nodes, all of the forces as well. And the settings that you might find useful is the strength and this attenuation. Of course, this is the color. You can change the color of this or increase the size of the indicator, and this doesn't have really any effect on the strength of the force. It's only going to make the indicator a bit larger for you so that you can select it more easily. And then there's the strength, and you can choose the strength in here. This is going to globally increase the strength on the actor, but if you want to make the strength weaker per node, you go here, for example, choose it, and then bring the strength up, and it's going to affect only this generator and its nodes. And uncheck it, go back to the default state. And then we have the attenuation. And this attenuation is going to create a fall off around this so that whenever the object is close to the force actor itself, it's going to be affected more. So let's change this one to magnet for a better visualization, and let's drag it into here. For example, now if I go in here to this trunk and affect the magnet, you see all of them are getting attracted to the point where the magnet is. And if I, for example, bring this here, you see all of them get affected equally. But you might not want this effect to happen. And the way to go for that is by this attenuation menu. You've put it to linear, and it's going to create a circle around this, and we have the distance and fall of distance. And this inner circle is where the most of the force is added, and then this, as you go further on the outer line, it gets weaker and weaker. And of course you can make it larger. Let me make this one larger so that it gets a bit of this tree in. So to make this affected, let's bring this in here, and let's make it stronger so that it encompasses these models in. And of course you can manipulate the circle and add to this number. For example, let's make it 50 instead. And now you see the trees on here are getting affected. This tree the most because it's closer to the actor itself, and not all of the trees are getting affected. And if you want to affect other trees, you either have to bring this here so that the circle encompasses all of the trees, or if you want to place it somewhere else, you bring it here and make the distance, for example, 100. And this is going to be in the units that you add in this preference tab, which we talked about before. And the next one is going to be quadratic, which is similar to the linear but with minor differences. And the next one is going to be hard, and it's going to remove this fall off. You see now this inner circle is going to be affecting the most, and in here it's going to be fall off. This is going to be perfect 100% force, and it's going to fall out until here, which it gets to 0. And if you make it hard, it's going to remove that fall off, and everything in here it's going to be affected by this strength value that you put. And if you make it none, it's going to remove all of the fall offs, and it's going to equally affect anything in this scene by this strength value, and of course the strength that you put into here. So let's make it 1 so that it's default. And now you see all of them have been equally attracted. And although you see now all of them are pointing in this direction, this trunk has only been affected and these other ones have not. And you see they are bending. It's because the trunk has been bended in this direction, and these are spawning in the direction that they should be. And this is something now related to that parent and children system. And now this is the local vector that these spines are going to be generated. And if I want to select these, I hit apply to magnet, and now you see these are getting affected individually. And if I make the strength, for example, something like 5, you see they are getting affected more than the trunk itself, and they're going to affect the children's as well. But if you want the children's also to point into this direction, you want to turn them on so that they go to that direction as well. So the first force that we're going to talk about is a direction, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to have an arrow that is pointing somewhere. It doesn't matter where you place it really. The only thing that matters is the rotation. And if I rotate it to, for example, this direction, and go for trunk and apply the direction, you see all of them are getting affected. And no matter where I place it, of course, that law of attenuation radius is going to be applied here as well. And in other words, if you set this attenuation to be none on this direction, it doesn't matter where you place it. But if you set it to linear, for example, this attenuation radius is going to come handy. And now if I select this and bring it here, this one only is going to be affected. and the nodes close to it are going to be affected the most. But other than that, if you set it to none, the movement of the direction doesn't matter. It only needs a rotation, and you hit E so that you can rotate somewhere. And anything with this node applied to it is going to get affected. And also the strength here, you can individually set the strength to anything that you want using this generator properties panel. This is for the direction, and now let's select these and select, and let's go for something negative. Now it's going to go reverse the direction, and it's going to make it inverse. So you should have that in mind as well. So let's check it off to disable it. So the next force that we're going to add is going to be the magnet. So to select the forces, you can come into here and select this as well if you could not find it in the scene so easily. So the next one is going to be magnet, and we also covered this one as well. Although on this one the direction, excuse me, the rotation isn't going to be important because it only looks at the location of the object, not the rotation, and it's going to create a pivot point so that all of them face into this direction, not into this direction, onto this point. You see, because each one is now pointing onto this point. So the next one is knurl, and this is good for twisting things around itself. It gives you a rotation factor. Let me delete this and bring the default one without affecting the settings. So this is the knurl, and it's going to give you this icon. You see it spins around itself. So let me bring it here so that it only affects this tree. I don't want the other trees to be affected. So let's bring the attenuation. It's good. And bring it up and select these. And the good thing is that if you select multiple generators and activate the knurl, it not only knurl, activate the force, all of them are going to be affected. And now you see these branches have been rotating and twisting around themselves in the direction of this knurl. And if you rotate this, you're going to change the direction that they are going to be spinning around themselves. Now look at the direction of this and compare to these. You see all of them are going to be twisting around themselves in the direction that you, excuse me, in the rotation that you give using this knurl. And if you make the strength more, you can see the effect better. So the next one is twist. And this twist, as the indicator shows, it's going to twist the branches up using this rotation that you give it. So let me bring it here again and make the attenuation right. And if you lose it, just go in here and select it. Okay, now let's make these branches being affected by this twist. And you see when I rotate this twist, the direction that they're going to twist around themselves are going to be different. And of course, if you make the strength higher, you're going to create something chaotic. So the next one is curl, and it's something similar to the knurl and twist, and it's going to give you this shape, and everything being affected by that is going to rotate inwards itself by the rotation of this. So let's check this, and it's going to look at the rotation of this and affect the rotation that they are going to spin around themselves. And let's make the effect stronger. You see now it's creating this effect just like this one, and now you see something like the shape of the icon has been created in here perfectly. You can see that. And of course, if you rotate it in all of the directions, you're getting what you want. And the next force that we're going to add is the planar, and this planar is going to create a plane, as you see, and anything that is being affected by this is going to face in this direction. And it's not like directional. Let me select these and be affected by the planar. And this is the plane. And let me increase the scale so that you can see the plane better. So the only thing that matters is the rotation of it. Of course, if you enable the attenuation, the location is going to be important. Now you see all of them are getting affected by this, and anything is going to face exactly where this is pointing. And if I enable the strength and make it higher, you see they're going to be all planed in the same direction. And it's going to create planar things. And if I rotate this, let me take this and rotate. Now you see all of them are facing this way. And whenever you rotate it, it's going to be just like satellites. They're all going to follow the same. But if you make the strength, for example, negative, let me make it negative, it's going to do the reverse and go in opposite direction. So have that in mind as well. The next force is the return, and it's good for returning the branches to their own grow location. So let's bring this here and select these and enable it. You see, especially if you go negative, they're going to wrap around themselves and go back to where they originally came from. So let's make it negative. Negative is going to create something like this. They're going to be wrapped around themselves and go back to their original location and rotation. And if you make it positive, it's going to be reversed. And the next ones are belonging to the seasons. And if we had the chance to talk about seasons, we will talk about them later on maybe. And the next one is knockout. Of course, we have the geometry, but we are not yet going to be talk about this because I believe this is a bit advanced and not good for introduction course. So the next one is the knockout, and it's going to give you a point, and this is rotation based as well. Now everything pointing into this direction is going to be deleted. So let's take these and turn them on, and this is going to be like a threshold. If you enable it, a lot of things are going to be deleted. So let's keep it to something like this and select the force itself and rotate it and delete everything that grows in that direction. And the strength is going to be like a threshold. If you make it a stronger, it's going to delete a lot of things. So I believe this is already good for the forces, and in the next chapter we're going to be talking about the spine. Okay, see you there.